Welcome back. This story is called Kimberly Johnson. Kimberly Johnson was the most beautiful woman that I ever met. She was an attorney in Tallahassee. I was in Orlando. As part of my job, I would travel to what's known as the Florida Panhandle, Pensacola, Panama City, Tallahassee. I would have to fly there on these little commuter planes. Delta Airlines ran a little commuter service inside of Florida. I'm talking about really small planes, like 12 people on the plane. So one day I had a mediation. Mediation is where you meet with the other attorney and the client, her client, and you try to resolve the case, try to settle the case instead of going to trial. Nobody wants to go to trial, even in workers' comp. So I get to this office where Kimberly Johnson works. Now, I'd never met her before. I had spoken to her on the phone, never met her in person, didn't know what she looked like. The office was in a house. It wasn't her office. She had a woman who was her boss, so she was like an associate. It was her and another woman. There was a total of three attorneys in the office. And I'd never been there before, never seen the office. It was an old house that had been converted into offices. So when you walk in, you're in what used to be the kitchen. So you're sitting, they have seats, benches, whatever, couch, and you're sitting there with all these people who are, injured, these clients, waiting for their turn to talk to their lawyer. So I'm sitting there waiting, and this woman comes to the door. There was a door between the kitchen and the inner office. It was a double door, so there was a door on top and a door on bottom, like a split door. And she opens the top door, and she steps up, and she says, she asks for me. She says, she says my name. And I look at her, and I said to myself, there is no way that woman is Kimberly Johnson. That has to be her secretary, because there's no way there's going to be a woman that beautiful who's an attorney. Well, sure enough, that was Kimberly Johnson. So she lets me in, we're talking, whatever. We're waiting for the mediation to start. She was wearing this dress that was really clingy dress. In other words, it showed all of her curves, in good detail. And I'm telling you, this woman had an incredible body. I mean, she just, like the song Brick House, she was built like a brick house. So we sat there, we were waiting for the mediation to start, waiting for the mediator to get there or whatever. And I'm looking at this woman. I mean, I'm completely, enthralled by this woman. She's so beautiful. Eventually the mediator comes, we get to the mediation. We're sitting at a table in the conference room. The mediator is on one end, I'm on the other end. Kimberly Johnson is sitting next to the mediator with her client, a woman who had been injured at work. I don't remember anything about the case. At the beginning of the mediation, now you understand the mediator knows nothing about the case. All the mediator knows is the name of the person and the name of the company they worked for. They know nothing about the details of the case at all. So at the beginning, the claimants, they call it a claimant instead of a plaintiff, the claimant's attorney explains to the mediator and to my client, who's the insurance company, who's on the phone, my adjuster is on the phone, what the issues are in the case and where their position is. So she's talking. This is the way it always works. The claimant's attorney goes first. They tell the story. Then I tell my story. So I'm sitting there in my seat, looking at Kimberly Johnson. She's talking about her client in the case. All of a sudden, the room goes quiet. There's not a sound going on. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Well, what was going on was Kimberly Johnson had finished her opening statement, and I was so enthralled or enchanted by looking at her that I didn't even realize that she had stopped talking until I heard this silence in the room. And everyone in the room, the claimant, Kimberly Johnson, the mediator, were looking at me because it was my turn to talk. Normally I would have spoke immediately after her, but I was so out of it that I couldn't even realize where I was. I knew that there was no way that I could ever go out with this woman on a date, because she lived in Tallahassee and I was in Orlando. That's like an 8-hour drive, so it would never happen. But somehow, some way, I got a date with her. She came to Lakeland for a trial, and she agreed to meet me after the trial. So I left my office. I drove to Lakeland, just didn't tell anybody. I just went and met her, and I had lunch with her. And we talked, and I told her I was from St. Louis, and she told me that she'd been in St. Louis. She'd gone to a Cardinals baseball game. She told me she liked to go to the baseball games early because she wanted to watch batting practice. So she was there at Busch Stadium, right by the dugout when the Cardinals were doing batting practice, and she said that Mark McGwire came out of the dugout to do batting practice. And you remember Mark McGwire was a slugger. He had the home run title for a short period of time, and then it came out that he was on steroids. So this is before his steroids. She said to me, when Mark McGwire came out, he was so big that I almost passed out. That's what Kimberly Johnson said. So I kind of looked down at myself and I'm like, well, I'm not much of a Mark McGuire, so I don't think this is going to go anywhere. And it never did. And I never saw her. We never dated or anything else. But after that incident, after meeting Kimberly Johnson, my friend Wayne Starr was another attorney. I told him all about her. Wayne and I were always talking about women because we were both single. And whenever we would talk about a woman, even though Wayne never met her, we would always end the conversation by saying, but she was no Kimberly Johnson. So if you ever track down Kimberly Johnson, tell her the story, tell her she was the most beautiful woman I ever met, and wish her the best of luck. And that's the story of Kimberly Johnson. Don't forget to read my book, Broccoli Time by Dante Allen, available now on Amazon Books.